Hello fellow traders, and welcome to this week's overview of the Forex and commodity market. Now, as I mentioned in my last video, these videos will both be a look at some fundamentals, we'll have a look at some relative strength in the market, and we will see if there are any good setups that we might be able to trade over the next week. Now, first of all, when we're looking at the fundamentals, now I just use my FX book here, but you can use pretty much all of these services. And what I'm looking at here is all of the medium and high marked news here. And for instance, we can see here today that there have been some Jackson Hole Economic Symposium. And this is what I mean, that it is extremely important that you follow the news, because right now, this week, everything has been about the Jackson Hole. Jackson Hole is as it said, an economic large meeting of central bankers and large economists from all over the world, and they're meeting up once a year in a city called Jackson Hole in the United States. They've done that since 1988, and I think it was in 1991 it was moved to Jackson Hole, and from then on it has just been a thing they have done every single year. Now, what is extremely important today is that, let us have a look here, that at, well, that is 1600 my time here in Denmark, but in about 4 hours from now, the Fed chair, Powell, he will speak. Why is that important? Because he does that often. Well, it is important because the economic heat is starting to turn up in the United States and all around the world, and people are starting to wonder when the Fed will start raising their interest rates. And before they do that, they need to have what is called a taper, because right now they're buying up for $120 billion per month in bonds, 80 billion in treasuries and 40 billion in mortgage-backed securities, and they will have slowly to wind that down. But as soon as they start to do that, there is less demand for bonds, meaning that the price will probably drop a bit at least, and the interest rate in the market, in the 10-year yield especially that I look at, will start to climb upwards. And when the interest rate starts to climb up, we see the dollar climbing up, meaning that if you are a Forex trader, you need to pay attention to what Powell says, because just the slightest indication that they will have their taper on faster than people expect, that will immediately send the bonds down, the interest rates up, and you will see the US dollar spiking. So at least if you are on the shorter time frames, if you're trading on 15 minutes or 1 hour time frames, you need to be aware of this and maybe be completely out of the market when these major events are occurring. There are also some other news coming out here, some Michigan Consumer Index and so on, but to be honest, today they will not be noticed. Today people will be listening closely to what Fed Chair Powell has to say. Alright, let's have a look at the overall market. And first of all, as you might recall, I have this spaghetti chart here, as I call it, where we are seeing the relative strength of the different the different Forex. You can see the Aussie here, the CAD, the Swiss, and so on. The blue line, for instance, is the Aussie. And last time I made an overview video like this, we had the Aussie coming down along with the CAD, the Canadian dollar, and the New Zealand dollar here. They were all coming down as with the oil, because they are primarily the commodity, what is called the commodity currencies. So when the oil drops, they are dropping, and the oil have begun to come up, and that means that they have been the strong pairs. I took a couple of losses here because I was short these pairs when they bottom, but that is how it is. We can also see that the red one up here, the Japanese yen, we can see the euro, we can see the Swiss franc, they have begun to go down here, and that of course is a bit of an indication as to the risk on in market, meaning that these Swiss yen, the Japanese yen, also the dollar, they are in demand when people are nervous about the market. So they have been dropping, and the commodity currencies have been going up. That is one thing here. We can also have a look at it on the 4 hour time frame, and I know it is a bit messy, but that is how this is. And here you can see the New Zealand dollar, the Australian dollar, and the Canadian dollar had dropped down a bit since yesterday here, but they are all quite strong. You can see the euro is gaining speed. The dollar is not really moving, it's just around zero here, and that is because people are awaiting what will happen when Powell he speaks this afternoon here. If he indicates a quick taper, you will see the dollar shooting up. If he indicates a slower taper and slower interest hikes, you'll see probably the dollar going down. Also, you have to notice if you're trading gold, for instance, that gold and partially oil, but especially gold, are negatively correlated to the dollar. So when we are seeing the dollar going down, you will see an upwards pressure on the gold, and the other way around. So if you are a gold trader, you need also to be aware, because if we see a sudden spike in the dollar, in the US dollar tonight, that will probably put some downwards pressure on gold. All right. When we're going over here, that is also something I do for myself every week, and often several times per week. As you know, I have divided my the different Aussie group and CAT group and so on, where all of the pairs are with, for instance, Aussie dollar here as the base currency. So that gives me a very good outlook. I know from this spaghetti chart here that for instance, the Aussie dollar have been going up in overall strength, but if I take a look at this one here, let's just have a look at the daily chart like this. We can see that the Aussie US dollar is still in a very nice downtrend. So even though the Aussie dollar have been going up the last days, I would not really dare, at least in my longer term trading, I would not really dare to go against this trend and hope for an upwards turn here. When we're looking at the Aussie Euro, it's the same picture. Aussie Swiss, Aussie Pound, Aussie Yen, Aussie CAT and Aussie New Zealand. You can see that the Australian dollar is pretty much weak towards all of the other currencies. So on a longer term time frame, of course we can go down on a 4-hour time frame to see if some opportunities should arise. Here you can see the upturn or the uptick in the US, in the Aussie here, and it's quite significant, but nothing where I really want to go against the overall daily trend. If we take a look at the next group here, you can see we have the Swiss group here, and that one is a bit more messy. If we're looking at the daily chart up in the upper left corner here, you can see towards the euro, the Swiss is quite strong, and you could actually try and you could consider, if you wanted to take a trade on this line here, that it finds some resistance. As you know, I find the larger trend here on the daily, and then I am looking for something over here on the 4-hour time frame, and that would be let's see if I can find my arrow here. That would be something like this. Then I would start see if I could time something on the lower time frames here. So this was the Swiss euro. We have the Swiss pound. It's also looked okay, but it's not a strong uptrend here. Swiss yen is kind of sideways. Then against the Aussie and the Canadian and the New Zealand dollar, there might be some potential bullish trends, with the being bullish in Swiss franc and bearish in Aussie CAT or New Zealand. Remember that the pairs might be turning the other way around in the pair you're trading. It might be New Zealand dollar Swiss. So of course, if you want to go long Swiss New Zealand dollar, but you have New Zealand dollar Swiss, that would be a short instead, because you're shorting the New Zealand dollar. That's an important thing to keep in mind. All right, the next group here is, let's just have a look at it. It's the Euro group. And as you can see, Euro have been losing strength towards the dollar lately here. It has been regaining some strength towards the Japanese yen, but still the overall trend is down here. Towards the Canadian dollar, you can see I have a short in the Euro CAT here, but that is a very slow trade that can easily go on for 2 or 3 weeks here. It is strong towards the Australian, a bit messy towards the New Zealand, and and then we're back at the Swiss here. So it is a bit of a messy picture. Also towards the pound, I actually have a long in the euro pound. Let's just have a look at that one here. Again, that is taking from the daily time frame, and it was taken, let me see, it was actually taken last night. So right now it is close to break even. This is my daily time frame strategy. Is the strategy I have the highest win rate on, quite a high win rate, but I'm only aiming for around 1.5 to 1 in reward to risk. All right, that was the euro group. Let's have a quick look at the pound group, if any of you are in anything there. When we're looking at the daily time frame, it is going down, but there is some bottoming out here towards the dollar. There might be a double bottom. You can also see the general upwards trend, but it's a bit messy towards the euro, downwards towards the Swiss, sideways on the CAD, upwards on the Aussie. Basically, you should consider right now, you should consider going short on the New Zealand dollar. That is, or of course it can turn, but it seemed like the New Zealand dollar is one of the weakest pairs overall. As you can see here, I'm actually short pound New Zealand dollar and have been for about a week or so, and it is close to my target down here. All right, we're going further on. Oh, we had the pound yen as well. The pound is a bit messy, and you might be able to find something like this, the pound yen, where you're trading in a range and you can see it bounces and you're going for the upper limit here. But again, the pound is a bit messy in my opinion here. Doesn't mean we can't trade it though. We just have to realize that we can't necessarily go for a trend trade like I normally prefer. All right, we have the yen group here, and towards the dollar it is a bit sideways and has been for a while. Towards the euro it is very strong, and you might consider a long yen towards the euro here. It's in a very good uptrend, and maybe in the lower part here. What I normally do is on the daily chart is that I can use what is called a regression channel. It is a statistical tool that draws the channel by itself here. And right now we are right in the bottom of this channel, so the yen towards the euro might be a long, meaning normally it is the pair is called euro yen, so you have to go short there instead, but I think you get the picture here. We have the yen towards the Australian, the yen towards the Canadian, the yen towards the New Zealand dollar, and yen towards Swiss franc and pound. So you can see overall yen is a strong currency right now towards many of these, so we might consider some long in the yen towards the New Zealand dollar, and since we know the New Zealand dollar is quite weak, this might be a good combination to choose from. But let's have a look at the last groups here. As you can see, I have a ton of watch lists here. We have the New Zealand dollar group here, and it is no surprise. Some of them it's going a bit sideways here, but overall we have a weak New Zealand dollar. You can see here the New Zealand dollar towards the pound. This might be a place where you would like to have some sort of sideways setup here and say that you are looking for a downward turn in New Zealand toward British pound. That might be somewhere, at least on the daily chart, you can see it here, and then we want to see some confirmation on some of the lower time frame. New Zealand dollar here going up towards the Aussie. The Aussie is also extremely, I think I said the New Zealand dollar was the weakest, but it's actually the Aussie. It's my mistake here. It might be yen towards New Zealand dollar or Aussie you want to consider here. Again, New Zealand dollar is not extremely strong, so I would primarily look for a short here. The last one we have down here is the United States dollar group. Last one we'll have a look at here. As you can see, the dollar is going up nicely towards the euro, and basically the dollar is in a good uptrend. The reason for that is, of course, that people are expecting Fed to start their taper in September or October. Maybe we'll get a bit wise on that today when Fed is talking, Powell from Fed is talking. But that is definitely something that is putting an upwards pressure on the dollar, on all the groups. So you could say that both yen and dollar is quite strong in an upwards direction, and the New Zealand dollar, Aussie, and maybe the Canadian dollar is on the negative. So if you take that knowledge and you try to find some of the pairs, let's just see, I have them all in here. You can have, for instance, the dollar yen. If we're going down to, sorry, not the dollar yen, they are of course both strong, but let's say we have the Aussie dollar, and we know the Aussie is quite weak and the dollar is strong, then we would have to take a short in the Aussie dollar. And as you can see, I actually have one. It is not on right now, I just have an alert on it, as we see here. If it breaks down here, I have some criteria on the 4-hour and 1-hour time frame. But if it breaks down here, I'll definitely take a short in the Aussie US dollar and ride it towards that bottom down here. So that is one possibility. You could also have an Aussie yen maybe here, as you can see, also respecting these areas here, and with some downwards pressure we could easily have something like, let's say we took a trade here. We put the stop somewhere up here, and we went for the next area down here that could be respected. We could easily have a 2-to-1 here, and you might even ride it longer. So again, this is how I look at it. I'm looking at where are the strongest currencies, where are the weakest, and I'm trying to pairing them up so I go long in the strong and short in the weak. I hope that makes sense. And I wish you a good weekend and a good trading week next week. I'll talk to you again shortly. Bye for now.